I got it, Mike. I got it on. All right. Okay, we'll get back on track here with Revelation. And again, thank you for taking the test. I appreciate that, and I learned so much from that. I think you did too. And so it was a great experience. And again, don't get down on yourself if you didn't do great on the test. You did great on the test just by taking the test. So if you only got 3 right, you learned 3 things. And if the test would have been on only those 3 things, you would have got 100. That's a good way to think about it. So, but thank you so much for doing that. I do want to back up and review. I want to start by reminding you of a verse in the first chapter. In Revelation 1 verse 19 it says, "Therefore write the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things that will take place after these things." This is what Revelation is about. Things that are in their time and things that will take place after that in their time, not in ours, in their time. For those first century Christians, there's things that happen in the book of Revelation that had already happened. They're being talked about. And then he says, and then there's things going to happen after that. That's going to happen twice in our study today. Actually, one of them has already happened in chapter 12 of Revelation, where we read about the woman and the dragon. And the woman is the kingdom of God, Old and New Covenant. And the reason it's the Old and the New Covenant is it's the New Covenant because the dragon, who is Satan, is persecuting the woman, who is the church. But it's more than just the church, because the woman gives birth to the child, and the child is Jesus, and the church didn't give birth to Jesus. Jesus gave birth to the church. The church started after Jesus. So technically, the woman is the kingdom, Old and New Covenant, because Jesus did come from the Old Covenant. Jesus was a Jew. He was born to a Jewish family in a Jewish community. So the woman is the church who gives birth. And of course, Jesus is the central character. As he is giving birth, the dragon is there to devour the child. And so Satan was there at the beginning. I'm going to make a new kind of nativity set with a big red dragon in it. What do you think? You think that'll be a big seller? Because he was there. Yeah, maybe that wouldn't fly too well. But he was there from the very beginning, tried to kill Jesus. Remember, he worked through Herod to kill all the babies in Bethlehem. And from the very beginning, he tried to kill, he tried to tempt Jesus, he tried to talk him down off the cross, he tried to discredit his resurrection, just anything he could do to try to stop Jesus, but he failed. Then in chapter 13, we had 2 beasts. We had a beast that came up out of the sea and a beast that came up out of the earth. And I go back and I watch the videos. I don't know how you can stand listening to me. I sure can't. Man, boy, bless your hearts for doing that. And I watch myself and I try to think how you are hearing what I'm trying to teach you. And I'm sure it sounds several times like you're saying, "Curtis, why don't you just come out and just say what it is?" I could. When I taught Revelation 13, I could have said, okay, the sea beast is the Roman emperors and their persecution of the Christians, and the earth beast is emperor worship. All right, you can go home. Could have done that. But I want you to go through the process I went through so you know how to arrive at the right decision and not just take my word for it. But in chapter 13, yes, the beast that comes up out of the sea is the emperors of the Roman Empire and how they persecuted the Christians. And we get that primarily from, let's see here, Verse 4 of chapter 13, they worship the dragon because he gave his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who wages war, who can wage war with him? And they've given him a mouth to speak arrogant words and blasphemy, and he's persecuting the church. Look at verse 7. It was also given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority over every tribe and people and tongue and nation was given to him. So that's what the first beast is the Roman Empire and their persecution of the Christians. Now, when we turn to the earth beast, in verse 11, we see, in verse 12, he exercises all authority of the first beast in his presence, and he makes the earth to dwell in it, and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. So the earth beast is emperor worship itself. And the reason it was a beast is because if you didn't worship the emperors, then you could not belong to the trade guild. If you didn't belong to the trade guild, you couldn't buy or sell in the community wherever you were at. And you had no way to make a living. You would starve. And many Christians died from starvation, as well as those who were arrested and martyred. There were many who died of starvation. So it was a big thing. It was a beast. And this beast looks like a lamb, right? He's innocent. Doesn't look scary at all. We already encountered a lamb in Revelation. Jesus is the lamb. Well, Satan can disguise himself as an angel of light, can't he? And so this evil beast, this emperor worship, is those who are enforcing the worship of emperors, either bowing down to the emperor. It could have been Nero earlier on. It was Vespasian at the time this was written. It would later be Titus or Domitian. Or they would bow down to a god called Roma, R-O-M-A, which is Rome itself. They worshiped Rome as a god. And if you did that, then you were in. But if you didn't, then things were rough. This was in verse 14, this beast had a wound, a fatal wound. We read about this already. A fatal wound is what kind? Kind you die from. And he died. This one died. And he was resurrected. How did that happen? How did he pull that off? Well, Nero took a machaira, the short sword, leaned it against his neck and said, "What a showman the world is losing in me," and shoved that knife through his neck and committed suicide. So he died of a fatal wound. He was resurrected later on in the person of Domitian. Domitian was known as the bloody arm of Nero. He was just like him. He was paranoid. He was spiteful, hateful. He was sexually deviant. He persecuted Christians the same way Nero did. So he was resurrection. Domitian was the resurrection of Nero. So that's how that came about. We studied verse 18 about, here's wisdom, understanding, calculate the number of the beast. The number is that of man, and his number is 666. 666 volumes have written about this. Movies are made about the 666. People don't want this in their phone number. You know, there's all sorts of... They what? Oh, on car tags. Yeah. We don't want it on their car tags or whatever. Address, anywhere. So, what is it? Well, the 666, it says, this takes wisdom. Get your thinking caps on. What is 6? Well, 6 is man's number. All right? 3 is deity. It is man deifying himself. And that's all it is. That's it. It says it takes wisdom. It doesn't say you have to be a genius. You just have to apply the principles. Man, number is number 6. Deity is 3. So you take man plus deity equals man deifying himself. Does that fit the Roman Empire? Oh, you bet it does. Every emperor, every Roman emperor from Augustus on claimed to be deity and expected to be worshipped. And they weren't the only ones. The Egyptian pharaohs were the same way. They expected to be worshipped as deity. 3? It's the number for deity. It's the... Oh, there's 3 6s. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah. There's 3 6s. Yes. Yes. Yeah. 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 666. So 6 plus 3. Man, I should have put times 3. It doesn't matter. It's man deifying himself. That's what it is. Yes. Yeah. There's 3 6s. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, if this works one more time, there we go. We'll get to our text in Revelation chapter 14. Let's start in verse 1. Then I looked, and behold, the Lamb was standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. And heard a voice from heaven, like the sound of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. And the voice which I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except the 144,000 who had been purchased from the earth. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they have kept themselves chaste. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been purchased from among men as first fruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their mouth. They are blameless. The Lamb is standing on Mount Zion. And in your notes and in your book, in the essence of Revelation, I have a list of scriptures I would encourage you to look up and read about Mount Zion, going all the way back to 2 Samuel, no, maybe it's 1 Samuel. It's 2 Samuel, chapter 5, verses 6 through 10, where David went to conquer Jerusalem. And they said, you're getting out in here. The blind and the lame could keep you out. Nevertheless, he got in. And so he conquered Jerusalem. And from that day forward, that's where he lived. And so it became known as the city of David. There were 2 cities of David. Jerusalem was one. Does anybody know what the other one is? Bethlehem. Because he was born there. But he conquered Jerusalem, and that's where he established his kingdom from. And eventually, as we know, that's where the temple was built. So, Jerusalem was the city of David, and that was Mount Zion. Jerusalem was the city, the walls built around the mountain. And so that's why it was famous. But it was Mount Zion. So, lots of scriptures in there. It's a very holy site. That's where he was. With him are 144,000. Now we've already encountered 144,000 in chapter 7. 144,000 is 12 times 12 times 10 times 10 times 10, right? And so 12 is the number for on earth. I was waiting for the on earth part. Yes. God's people on earth. 12 is God's people on earth. 10 is human completeness. Okay. So 12 times 12 is the totality of God's people on earth. And 10 times 10 times 10 is human completeness to the nth degree. It just means everybody. Nobody gets left out. God's not going to come and judge and say, oops, miss so-and-so over there. Sorry. He doesn't do that. He knows who are his. In chapter 7, they're definitely on earth. Look at how it starts off there in verse 3. Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. They're on earth. In the next verses, there's a multitude that's in heaven. So there's a religion out there that teaches only 144,000 go to heaven and the multitude's on earth. Well, they got it backwards, right? At least in chapter 7, the 144,000 on earth, the multitude is in heaven. But that's going to change in chapter 14, as we're going to see here in a moment. So remember this verse that I just showed you? Things which are and things which will take place later. So now, he's saying right now the 144,000 are on earth. But chapter 14 is going to show us something that takes place after this. So watch the transition. These 144,000, they have a name written on their foreheads. I'll just go ahead and put this up here for you. His name and the name of his father is written on their foreheads. They're singing a new song, a song that only the 144,000 know. I had a Bible study with a minister of this religious group that believes only 144,000 are going to heaven. I said, I'm one of the 144,000. He said, you are? I said, yeah, I know the song. I do. I know the song. He said, well, maybe you are. I don't know. But yeah, only they know the song. They're purchased from earth. They don't defile themselves with women. Okay? They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. They're purchased from among men. No lies found on their mouth. They're blameless. Is this literal? It can't be. It can't be, unless only men are going to heaven, and men who have never been with a woman. All right? And all of them have to be Israelites, according to chapter 7, right? They're from each of the 12 tribes. I mean, you can't take this literal, and so 144,000 is not literal either. This is where people get off on Revelation. Either it's literal or it's not literal. And you can't just pick and choose and say, well, I want this part to be literal and that not. No, it's apocalyptic. It's kind of like parables. Any interpretation you make of a parable that's literal is the wrong interpretation, right? We understand that with parables. A parable is a story that has a meaning other than the thing it's talking about. Same thing is true with Revelation. It's talking about something here, but it has a deeper meaning. And so any interpretation that's literal, if we go literal 144,000, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 144,000, we've missed the point. That's not what it is. It's not literal. What else we want to say about this? Like I said, they kept themselves pure. And where are they at? Did you figure that out yet? Where are the 144,000? Well, he's standing on Mount Zion, but that could be figurative. If you look at those verses, Mount Zion can mean on earth, but it can also be, in Hebrews, it's talking about heaven. So that doesn't tell us everything. Look at verse 2 again. Like the sound of many waters, like the sound of thunders. The voice which I heard was the sound of harpists playing on their harps. He didn't say they had harps. I saw a picture today. I didn't use it. I used this one because the other one had them with harps. Doesn't say they had harps. It said their voices were like harps. They're singing the song in verse 3. Where? Before the throne and before the four living creatures. Where's that? That's heaven. So in chapter 7, they're on earth. But in chapter 14, they're in heaven. Write down the things that are and the things that will take place after these things. So those who were on earth, the chosen ones, the ones who received the seal of the Lamb, are going to heaven. That's the picture here. All right? That's the encouragement that it's given to those who are faithful. Everybody see that? All right, verse 6. And I saw another angel flying in mid-heaven, having the eternal gospel to preach. Oh, I like that, don't you? The eternal gospel to preach to those who live on the earth and to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said with a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the seas and the springs of waters." And another angel, a second one, followed him, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made all the nations drink of the wine of the passion of her immorality." So this first angel, he has the eternal gospel. And his message is to who? Everybody. There's nobody on earth who doesn't get to hear the gospel. And so if you are restraining somebody from hearing the gospel, you need to repent, Christian. If you are a Christian and you just said, "Oh, I'm not going to talk to that person," you have the wrong attitude. Everybody deserves to hear the gospel. Everybody needs to hear the gospel. And the gospel, in a nutshell, fear God, give him glory, worship him, right? So that's what the gospel is. We need to fear God. We need to put our confidence, our trust in God. We need to give him the glory, and we need to worship him. And this is the word proskuneo, which means to kiss toward God. Show your love to God. That's what worship is. This is what is the good news. But the other angel is saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." So this is our first mention of Babylon. We've had Egypt, we've had Sodom so far, but not Babylon. What do we know about Old Testament Babylon? Who was Babylon in the Old Testament? Nebuchadnezzar. And what did they do to the Israelites, or to the Jews, the Judah? Enslave them. Yeah. So this Babylon that's mentioned here is not the literal Babylon. Let's see if we can figure out who it is. Let me just put some scriptures up here for you. This is each time that it's mentioned in Revelation. Our verse 8 says, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great." We're going to encounter in chapter 16, verse 19, says, "The great city was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations fell. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of his fierce wrath." Chapter 17, we'll see it again, "And on her forehead the name was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great." That is a great chapter. Chapter 17 is, we're going to encounter a woman, a harlot, and she's having it good. Life is good. She says, "I'm never going to mourn." And she's cocky, and she's dressed in purple, and she's riding on the beast, and she's just having a good old time. And right there on her forehead, Babylon is her name, and we're going to find out who she is. Then when we get to chapter 18, Babylon's mentioned three times. Verse 2, which sounds like our text here. "He cried with a mighty voice, 'Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She's become a dwelling place of demons, a prison of every unclean spirit, a prison of every unclean and hateful bird.'" So wherever this Babylon is, there's some hateful birds in there, okay? Angry birds, maybe. I don't know. There might be. All right. Then in verse 10, "Standing at a distance because of the fear of the torment, saying, 'Woe, woe, the great city Babylon.'" Notice I put in bold the great city as well as Babylon, because there's several times those are mentioned in the same verse. "The strong city. And in 1 hour your judgment has come." And then verse 21, "Then a strong angel took a stone, like a great millstone, threw it into the sea." It says, "So will Babylon, the great city, be thrown down with violence and will not be found any longer." We've talked about the great city before, haven't we? Who is the great city? It has to be Rome. There's no other city that was known in biblical times, in Jesus' time or the first century, as the great city. Was Jerusalem ever called the great city? What was it called? The holy city. That's the holy city. Okay, but this is the great city. So Babylon it's Rome. It's Rome. That's who it is. And if it is, going back to our verse, 14:8, why is he saying it's already fallen? Whoa, wait a minute. It hasn't fallen yet. Oops. How could he say it's already fallen? Well, because this is God. And God can talk about things that haven't happened as if they've already happened. Because if God says it's going to happen, it's going to happen, all right? And it's kind of like, you ever watch boxing, you know? And you watch a fight, and maybe it goes, what do they go, 10 rounds? It goes all 10 rounds, and at the end, they'll appoint one and say, this is really the winner. And you say, well, how could he be the winner? And they'll go back maybe to round 3. And when he hit him here, right there, that was the punch that caused him to lose. Now, sometimes they hit him with that punch, but they'll still keep standing, you know, for a couple more rounds. But they haven't fallen to the canvas yet, but they're going down, right? Well, Rome has been punched. Rome messed with God's people. And Rome is going down. Fallen is Babylon the Great. And I have Romans chapter 4, verse 17 in your notes. This angel can cry the victory of Jesus over Rome because we serve the God who can call, and I'm quoting now, things that are not as though they were. Romans 4:17. He can do that. He can call things that are not yet as though they were. Because if God says you're going down, you're going down. All right? Any questions on that? You would have figured that out without me, right? Sure you would have. You don't need me. I don't even know why I'm up here. You get this stuff. All right. Let's read on. Verse 9. Then another angel. My stars, how many angels are there? A third one followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives the mark on his forehead or on his hand, he also will drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed full strength in the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever. They have no rest day and night, those who worship the beast and his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the perseverance of the saints, who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, right, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Yes, says the Spirit, so that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds will follow them. So now here comes another angel. He's saying, man, anybody that got the mark of the beast, that's bad. Is it a literal mark? No, this is revelation. Why is it on the forehead? Why is it on the hand? It's the thinking, all right? I can tell by the way you think whether you follow the beast or you follow the Lamb. I can tell. Or it's on your hand, your actions. I can tell by the things you do whether you follow the beast or you follow the Lamb. That's what it means. That's the mark. Just like we're marked by the Lamb. You should be able to tell by the way we think. You should be able to tell by the things we do that we have the mark of the Lamb. And so that's the difference. Those who have the mark of the beast are going to be tormented with brimstone, fire and brimstone. Do I need to explain what that is? I think we know what fire and brimstone is. We've heard fire and brimstone preaching, right? Right? I preach fire and brimstone, don't I? I try. You know, actually, I preached a sermon one time and I called it fire and brimstone. And the member said, that's not fire and brimstone. Gosh. I tried. They're going to be tortured. They're the ones that are going to suffer. Now, up to this point, who's doing the suffering? Christians are doing the suffering. And those who bow down to the beast, they got it easy, don't they? But it's all about to be changed. And it changed back, I don't know if you noticed this, but the ones who knew the song, who got to know the song? Only the 144,000. Only the ones who had the mark of the Lamb. They were the privileged ones. So it's flipping over. That's what he's saying. They're the ones, up to this point, the Christians are the ones who haven't had any privileges. Now they're going to be the privileged ones. And the ones who got the mark of the beast are going to wish that they hadn't, because they're going to suffer. What else was I going to say about this? They receive the mark. He says in verse 13, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Remember I told you there's 7 blessings in the book of Revelation, where it says blessed is or blessed are. Find those if you haven't done that. Don't cheat. Don't use Google. Don't use your eSword or your Logos or anything like that. Look them up. Find the 7 blessings mentioned in Revelation. All right. Up to this point, chapter 14, verse 6 through 14, verse 13, actually outlines the rest of the book of Revelation. I put that up here on the screen for you. 14 verses 6 through 7 parallels chapter 15 through 16 that we're about to read in the 7 bowls of wrath. Verse 8, which we just read, parallels chapters 17 and 18, the beast and the fall of Babylon. Chapter 14, verses 9 through 12 parallels chapter 19 through 20 of Revelation, the judgment of Satan and the judgment of the wicked. And then the verse 13 that we just read parallels the reward for faithful service of the saints. And that is chapters 21 through 22. So we just got an outline of the rest of Revelation in those verses. Verse 14. Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and sitting on the cloud was one like a son of man, having a golden crown, this is a Stephanos, on his head, and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, crying out with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. Then he who sat on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was reaped. Have you ever seen anybody cutting with a sickle, an old sickle? All right. You want that thing really sharp. If it's sharp, it's real easy to do. You just walk along and you just grab it and you just lay it over. Right? And that's what's being described here. Well, someone like a son of man, wow, that's a clue, isn't it? Someone like a son of man. He's coming on what kind of cloud? A white cloud. What's white? Purity. Always good. Always good. No exception. Okay, a white cloud. He has a golden Stephanos. That's the victor's crown on his head. And he's holding the sickle. Who is this? It's Jesus. You know. See, you don't need me. I can go home. You don't need me. You got this. And an angel says, go ahead and put in your sickle and reap. And so he does. Now, I want you to know something. Jesus received instruction from a subordinate, from an angel. Remember the white horse in chapter 4? I was criticized in my book because I said the white horse is Jesus. And the guy that criticized me says, Jesus wouldn't take instruction from an angel because an angel told him come and he came out. Well, here's another example where if this is Jesus, he's taking instruction from an angel. The Lord, I know, is humble enough to receive instruction from an angel, especially if that angel is coming from God, the message is coming from God. So just because he's receiving an instruction from a subordinate does not mean this is not Jesus. It is obviously Jesus. Put in your sickle, reap, the time has come, and swoosh, he swings his sickle, and it's over. The harvest is done. All right, it's that quick. Let's finish up here. Verse 17. Another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, and he also had a sharp sickle. And then another angel. Have you noticed there's a lot of angels here? There's a bunch of angels. They're just everywhere. Another angel, the one who has power over the fire, came out from the altar, and he called out with a loud voice to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, "Put in your sharp sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe." So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and gathered the clusters from the vine in the earth and threw them into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out from the winepress up to the horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. That's a lot of blood, isn't it? So this angel's got a sickle. Another angel says, go ahead, harvest. So Jesus did his harvesting. Who's he harvesting? His. Okay, he got his first. Now here comes another one. Whoosh. And he is going to get the unrighteous. Toss them into the winepress. It's trodden outside the city. Where was Jesus crucified? Outside the city, right? And yeah, the blood is up to the horse's bridle. Right about there, would you say? For 200 miles. So a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people did not get right with the Lord. Isn't that sad? That's the imagery here, is there's people who did not listen to God. Okay, that is chapter 14. Do I have any questions? All right. Let's have a word of prayer. God, the things that we studied tonight, we leave these in your hands. I pray that the things that we learned, that we did get the right understanding. We've taught this precious book of Revelation the way you want it to be taught and learned. And I just pray that you would bless us as students, help us to be attentive to what you're saying to us, help us to understand what it meant to our first century brethren and understand the horrific persecution that they went through, but also see how much you loved and protected your church, because there's a message here for us as well at Lake Road, and help us to get that message. God, we appreciate you so much, and just know that you are a loving God and that you are looking out for us. And whatever trial or tribulation, whatever persecution we might go through, however large or small it might be, we know you're very much aware of that. And there may be times when we feel like we are the ones who are less privileged. We're not receiving some things because we won't go along with the world. But God, I pray that you will help us to be faithful to the end, knowing that in the end you will make things right, and you will bless us the way that you feel is fit. And we are looking so much forward to that great day when we will face our judgment, and we will be ushered into your kingdom to be with you forever. As through Christ we pray. Amen. Hello, so glad that you watched this video on the Bible study. We love studying the Bible here at Lake Road Church of Christ in Gore, Oklahoma. We'd really love for you to come and visit with us. And so our address is on the screen and our service times. And so just pick a time, come on down. We would love to see you. Thanks again for watching.